Why sampling? In research, it is not possible for the researcher to obtain data from every respondent. The data or the research study can also be completed by selecting a sample of respondent under inquiry. That's why we use sampling techniques. In sampling technique, there are different terms need to be understood by the researcher. The first one is population. Population is defined as the aggregate of all observation of interest to the researcher. The population is a complete set of elements. It can also be people or object. Say for example, CEOs of different 500 Fortune companies, recruitment agencies, Tesco between data, for example, from 1st April 2018 to 30th October 2018, also considered as a population. Population can be finite population or it can be infinite population. If the researcher want to study the academic performance of all third semester students of Master of Engineering branches in a given technical institution, that population is considered as finite population. But when no term is associated with the population, say for example, if I said that all the students pass out from Masters of Engineering branches from various engineering institutions, those population is considered as infinite population. So population can be people, population can be events, population can be cases, or population can also be Tesco between time. The population is also classified as target population as well as accessible population. Target population refers to the entire group of individual. The researcher wishes to able to make generalization about population. That population is considered as target population, and if the researcher is able to apply the conclusion, that set of population that is realistically selected from a target population is considered as accessible population. So what is sample? A sample is a subset of population from which the researcher intend to generalize the results. It should be representative of population. The sample must always be accurate and precise. And there are two different terms that are associated with sample concept. First one is sampling unit. Sampling unit is a single member of sample. Say for example, 20 CEOs of different Fortune 500 companies, 10 recruitment agencies. Sales in figure of a store is considered as sampling unit of that population. And if I said a recruitment agency, a CEO of Fortune 500 company, those are considered as element of that population. So element comprises a single member in the population. Sampling means selecting a given number of subjects from a defined population as representative of that population. The researcher can select a small sample from a population. By studying that small sample, the researcher can also apply the conclusion for a population as a whole. The process is considered as sampling process. There are two different designs of sampling. First one is probability sampling, in which different techniques are random sampling technique, systematic random sampling technique, stratified random sampling technique, and cluster sampling technique. Another type of sampling design is non-probability sampling design, in which different techniques are convenience sampling, judgmental sampling, quota sampling, and snowball sampling. So this is about sampling and different sampling designs. So in sampling design, there are two different techniques that are probability and non-probability sampling technique. If the researcher wishes to be able to make generalization about a population, and it seeks representative to a wider population. In that case, probability sampling techniques are used by the researcher. In probability sampling, every member has a same chance of being selected for the sample, and it is regarded as the best and most scientific sampling technique. As compared to non-probability sampling technique, the probability sampling technique has less chances of bias. Say for example, all the students of a class appearing for a similar examination. All student or particular section is considered as a wider population for probability sampling. Different probability sampling techniques are: first one is simple random sampling technique. In simple random sampling technique, all individuals in the defined population have an equal and independent chance of being selected for the population. Independent chance means one individual is being selected, but the selection of that individual does not affect the selection of other individual in that sample in any way. This is the best way to obtain representative sample. For example, drawing name from a hat. That is a simplest example of simple random sampling technique. In simple random sampling technique, a list of population is required, and different steps to be followed for simple random sampling technique is written on the slide. In simple random sampling technique, one can also use random tables. In random table, the researcher need to select a row or column at any point in a random table, and from that column or row, the researcher need to select the number of digits according to the desired sample size. If the desired sample is not obtained, the researcher can further proceed and select another row or column to have a desired sample size. Systematic sampling technique is different from simple random sampling technique because in this technique there is no independent selection of the members of sample. There is a systematic way to be followed to select individuals for the sample. In systematic sampling technique, the population size is divided by the desired sample size. Say for example, if from population of say 3000, a sample of 100 is required, then every 30th person is selected from that list. The major point of concern when we are going to select systematic sampling technique, in this case, if there is any chance of periodicity in the list of population, in that case, simple random sampling technique need to be used instead of systematic sampling technique. So it is a modification of simple random sampling technique. The various steps to be followed in systematic sampling technique is: take every kth name until the desired sample size is reached. If I have a list of my class students and I want to use systematic sampling technique, in that case, every third person, according to my desired sample size, if my kth unit is the third unit, then from the list of the student, I need to select every third individual from the list. In stratified sampling, the population is divided into a number of subgroups. Those are homogeneous and known as strata. And from those strata, the random samples are to be selected. Ensure all sample size is proportional to the size of the strata in population, and there are two different methods that are used for stratified sampling. First one is equal allocation method. Select equal number of all the strata. In equal allocation, say for example, divide the population into number of stratas. The stratas are homogeneous, and from homogeneous strata the researcher is need to select samples. Depending upon the similar characteristics, if I divided my mechanical engineering students into two stratas, that are boys and girls, and for equal allocation method in stratified sampling, in sample also the same proportion need to be selected by the researcher. Another technique that is used in stratified sampling is proportional allocation. Select strata members in the sample proportional to the members in the strata. Say for example, if there are 10,000 students of different engineering branches in city Chandigarh, India, and for civil engineering branch there are 5,000 students, for mechanical engineering 3,000, and for electrical engineering 2,000 students. For using proportional allocation method, the researcher need to define the proportion of number present in each strata. The proportion is to be calculated, and remember, if the sum of all the proportion is equal to 1, means the proportion are selected accurately. And according to the desired size of the sample, the researcher need to select number of individual for the sample size. Another technique is cluster sampling technique. Cluster sampling technique is applicable when it is very much easy for the researcher to select a group rather than individual. Say for example, if the researcher want to study the attitude of the person living in a city, in that case the city is divided into number of blocks, and from those blocks the samples need to be selected by the researcher. The different steps followed for cluster sampling is given in the slide. So when to use different research design in probability sampling? Random sampling is used when entire population is homogeneous. Stratified sampling is used when population is heterogeneous, when certain homogeneous or subpopulation can be isolated, and that set is considered as strata. Cluster sampling is used when population is very large and spread over a large geographical area. And systematic sampling need to be used when data does not exhibit pattern and there is low risk of data manipulation. When population size is more and there is a need to create multiple samples, then systematic sampling is the best approach to be used by the researcher. So this is all about probability sampling designs. These are some of the references that I have used to prepare this PowerPoint presentation. Thank you.